If you're brand new to live streaming, you've probably heard of a video switcher, but you may not know exactly what it is, and at this point you might be afraid to ask.
And at this point I'm too afraid to ask.
Well, you're in the right place. A video switcher is the most important part of any multicam stream, except maybe the cameras. At its core, it's really just a device or a piece of software that takes in multiple video signals and lets you choose which video signal to output. So in terms of a church live stream, it's the thing that actually lets you switch from a shot of your vocalist to a shot of your drums to a wide shot of the crowd, etc., etc. And this is true whether you're live streaming or just showing the camera's output on a TV. There are tons of different video switchers out there. Big ones like some of the Blackmagic ATEM constellations, or something even more professional like a Ross switcher. There's small ones like the famous ATEM Mini series. There are software-based ones like vMix and OBS, and the list goes on and on. But even though switchers can look very different, there's a lot of common characteristics between all of them. First off, all video switchers have a number of video inputs. I mean, if they just had one, you wouldn't really need a switcher, now would you?
You don't need this.
Those inputs can come in a few different flavors. You can have HDMI or SDI ports for plugging in cameras, or even video files or screen captures if you're using a software switcher. Whatever your inputs are, the switcher has some way to bring them in. All video switchers also have a video output, more commonly known as the program output or the program feed. The program output is going to change what it's displaying based on which of the inputs you've chosen. That's simple enough, but how do you actually select which input you want to show on the output? Well, the first thing is to know which video feed is in which input, and for that you're going to need a multi-view. A multi-view is exactly what it sounds like. It's a way to see your multiple video inputs. Pretty much all switchers have a video output labeled multi-view. And when you plug that into a monitor, you'll see a grid that shows all of your different inputs as well as some other info. You're usually able to configure these multi-views to show exactly what info that you want to see, and some switchers have more than one multi-view output if there's a lot of inputs and they don't all just fit on one.
There are too many.
Most multi-views also have another section up in the top right that actually shows what signal is currently being sent to the program output. If it doesn't have that section, it's going to be whatever input is currently highlighted in red, because red means live. So great, we can see all of our inputs and our program feed, but how do we actually choose which input is going to get sent there? Well, that's going to depend on your switcher and the mode that you're in. Most switchers have buttons on them corresponding to each one of your inputs, and sometimes it has two separate rows of buttons. The top row is the program row, so if you hit any of the buttons in that row, that particular input will be sent to the program instantly. You can also see that the current one being sent will usually turn red, indicating that that input is live. If your switcher only has one row, this would be if you're in the program switching mode or cut mode. Now, the bottom row is your preview row. You can think of preview as being what's up next. On switchers, that's usually represented by a green highlight and is often shown in the top left of a multi-view. On a switcher with a single row like an ATEM Mini, you'll have to change into preview mode, and then your buttons will act as preview buttons. When you select one of those inputs, it'll highlight green and it will show in the preview panel of your multi-view. From here, you need to actually transition it from preview over to program. Switchers usually have a couple ways of doing this. The cut button is the main one, and it will instantly switch between them. Then there's the fade button, which will crossfade the two inputs, or there might be any number of other transitions. Some switchers also have a T-bar, which lets you pick a speed of a crossfade transition. When you actually make your transition, you'll see that your preview and program signal are swapped, and you can actually see that in the buttons as well with the highlights. So that's how you choose what video is being output from your video switcher. It may take a minute to kind of wrap your head around it, but it'll become second nature in no time, I promise.
I'm trying to wrap my head around it.
Another important thing that all switchers have is a way to input and output an audio signal. Usually your video inputs will carry audio with them, and most switchers also have a way to take in a separate auxiliary audio input. There are then a couple ways to configure which audio is actually output from your switcher. The first being called audio follows video. Basically, if you send a video signal to program, that input's audio will also go to program. This is great if each input is receiving its own unique audio, such as audio coming from different computers or something like that. The other option is to just pick an audio source to be output. This is usually the better option for a church live stream. You'll send the audio from your soundboard into the aux audio input, and then choose to just output that no matter which camera you're outputting. Again, you can choose whatever best fits your needs in your switcher settings. So now you've got a video signal and an audio signal coming out of your switcher. You can then take this signal and send it wherever you want, a TV, a recorder, or a stream encoder to actually send this feed to the internet. Some switchers, like the ATEM Constellation, actually have more than one output, and you can choose what signals get sent to those too. And that can be a duplicate of your program feed, or even just a particular video input. This can be helpful if you need to run multiple displays with the same signal, or maybe a particular display always shows camera 1. Now, I mentioned earlier that some switchers don't have easily accessible buttons on them in order to control your switching. Or your switcher may be set up in a rack where you can't get to the buttons, or you might even be using a software switcher that obviously doesn't have any good buttons on it because it's just running on a computer. In order to switch your videos on any of these, you'll need what's known as a control surface. Basically, it's some device with buttons on it that will connect to your switcher and tell it what to do based on the buttons you're pressing. These can often be really expensive, often as much or more than the switcher itself. But there are also ways to do this cheaply, such as with a Stream Deck running the companion software. I've got a video about that on my channel, you can see the link up here. No matter what route you go, just make sure that you've got a plan on how to actually control your video switcher. I know that's something that tripped me up when I first got started, and so I want to let you know about that.
Don't make the same mistake that I did.
So now you know what switchers do, and how do you know which one to buy? Unfortunately, I can't answer that for you, but there are a few things to know. Make sure that first you pick a switcher that has enough inputs and outputs to actually fit your needs, and maybe a few extra in case you want to decide to expand and grow. Make sure that the switcher accepts the types of signals you plan on using, so 1080p or 4K, whatever you need. And finally, choose whether you want to go the hardware or the software route. Software switchers usually have a lot of features built in, like recording and streaming, and they're very flexible, but they also have more lag than a hardware switcher will have, so they're not really suitable for iMag or running something live in the room. And they also could potentially have more problems because they're really just a piece of software running on a computer, so any software that's crashed on your computer before, well, software switchers can do the same thing. Hardware switchers are usually a bit more reliable because they're only doing one purpose-built thing, but that can come at a much higher price tag, and they can't be used for anything else except switching, so it's not a computer that you can use the rest of the week. Pick whatever makes the most sense for your church, but personally, I can't recommend Blackmagic's ATEM switchers highly enough. Whether the Mini or some of the higher-end Constellation models, I've used them both and they're fantastic. I've got links to those in the description. There's a lot more to talk about when it comes to video switchers, like having multiple mix effects, upstream and downstream keys, super sources, ISO recordings, the list goes on and on. But there's not enough time in this video to cover all of that, so it'll be another video coming soon. I hope this video covering the very basics has been helpful to you guys in the meantime. And if you've got any specific questions, drop them in the comments because I love hearing from you guys. Until next time.